G'day, it's weekly Waffle time and we're pumped for a couple of reasons. One is that the great man Vince Accardi from dailysexuals.com.au has been good enough to join us. And two, Vince is shorter than Danny Power, who I normally have to look up to. So, how are you, great man? Thanks so much for having us. Now, I work with Vince on Carnival, which is RSN's digital channel, and he's about to do some stuff on the Racetrack Ralphy app. So we're going to take advantage of this and try and give, particularly if you're a smaller punter or you tune in once a week or you're just learning the caper, a bit of Vince 101 here. Because it'd be fair to say, Vince, you look at racing a bit differently than people have previously.
Yeah, as it turns out, yes. Very true.
All right, well, I'm going to... a couple of touch points before we get into the overall philosophy of the stuff you send out on dailysexuals.com.au. Data beats vision. Data beats what your eyes can see. Talk us through that theory.
Yeah, that's a really important point that you make there, Ralphie. Data versus vision can be completely different. So many times we all fall in the trap. We see how a race is running and it feels like it's run fast. And then when you actually put the clock on it and you look at it and you benchmark it against, say, the last 20 years of history, you suddenly realise, oh, geez, they've either gone a lot slower or a lot faster than what you thought they did. And that plays a massive role in the exertion of a horse and their true capabilities on how that race has ended up being run for that runner.
So in other words, it doesn't matter how good your eye is. And you've been watching races for how many years? Closely?
Since I was 19, so that's about 30 years, yeah. 31.
So you're very confident in saying, doesn't matter how good your eye is, you can't see by your eye 0.3 of a second over a 200 metre
impossible. It's just not possible.
Yeah, so the data says all.
Yeah, not possible.
Part two of that, the great Ron Barassi in AFL once said, it's not practice makes perfect, perfect practice makes perfect. By extension with you, it's not just data beats vision, it's accurate data beats vision.
Well, that's such an important part about understanding it and having clarity on the data. You've got to have clean data to work with. If you don't have that, when you're sort of looking at future perspectives or analysing the post-mortem of what's happened in that race, you can't afford to be 1 length, 2 lengths or 3 lengths out in your prognosis of what the performance was of that runner, because that's going to dynamically change the innate athletic ability of that runner's performance. So
it's a part of your motivation, if you like, of setting up your own computer program that accurately frames horses to 1/100th of a second?
Well, basically how it operates is, I keep it nice and simple. It's all digitally streamed in and everything's designed from a time perspective. It's one frame.
Yep.
So the tolerance level is 1 frame either side.
Which is 1/24th of a second from when I was in TV. So.
Pretty much 1/25th of a second. Yeah, exactly. 1/25th of a second.
So by what I'm saying to punters, and particularly if you're just tuning into the caper, often I'll get your data after seeing what's in the paper, and it's 0.5 of a second out sometimes an overall time, and you might say, well, half a second, who gives a stuff over a race? Half a second is 3 lengths, and we're trying to pick winners by that much sometimes.
Well, yeah, we talk so much about, oh, well, this horse has got 3 kilos more, 2 kilos more. Well, half a second, if you looked at it's 3 lengths, but shouldn't that be 4.5 kilos difference in weight?
Absolutely. So, well, I'll go reverse order what I had there, because you've touched on something that I've really learnt from working on you on Carnival and RSN is you think weight's not irrelevant, but you think it's overrated as a form study tool, don't you?
Oh, there's no question about the way weight's conducted and structured up into ratings, that it sometimes has a platform that isn't correct.
So what you're saying basically is if you put 1 kilo on the shoulder of Buddy Franklin and we're trying to play against him in footy, he'll still beat us.
Oh, he'll crush us. And even if we said, look, have a 20 kilo pack sack on, he will still crush us.
But, and I've really thought about this, because is this perhaps because the weights and measures, when they say weights and measures of ratings and form study and all that, is going back 100, 120 years. By bringing in the vision and the accurate measurement of vision, what you're doing, you've added a layer which is far more modern thinking, far more superior to what they ever had available to them.
And that's what it is. It's not we're geniuses or anything. It's just we're able to use modern day technology to our advantage, and that's exactly what it is. Weight's all about thresholds as opposed to what they're carrying.
All right, let's have another bit of your philosophies. The unlucky runner. I've got a theory that bookmakers have made more money through this phrase than any other. How far would that have won by had it got a split, had it not been checked? And the next start, instead of being a 5-to-1 shot, it ends up being $2.50 and it gets beaten again. What about that for a theory?
I love that.
Yeah.
That's sensational. Yeah, well, this is a theory that, in my view, is they get blocked, they get checked. But what happened, it's a 1,200 metre race, it's a short distance race. So what happened to the other 1,150 metres? What happened?
I can't tell you how many times since I've been doing 3 or 4 years a database myself, and I'll write down, and pardon the brutalness of it, I might just write down one word next to a horse's name, murdered, in that the jockey just gave it no chance whatsoever. The percentage of that horse that wins the next start is very low.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is that the bad ride, the unlucky run, is so overrated because often it's the one that wins that's underrated by the market.
It's far more important to work out if a horse has run 5 lengths faster than what it normally does than getting a check-in or a block. That just might mean he's going to stay fresh for the next run.
Now, positioning. I reckon speed mapping is so important when you sit down, you try and work out, and you can do it in a real basic sense. You don't need to do it at the level you do it or I do it or anyone does it. Speed mapping is how I've virtually started my form study. It's something that can be pretty much done. You can see, well, that's a natural leader, that's a natural back mark, and you put it together from there. But what you're saying is that positioning is a lot more natural than it is tactical.
Oh, it is, very much so. We've got to always remember, jockey, what are they, 48 kilos, 60 kilos, let's look at that quantum range. A thoroughbred, what are they, half a tonne, 450 kilos, real small ones, 400 kilos.
Yeah. Big one, 600.
Yeah. You ain't going to be able to control that.
Yeah. So, and just to explain it further, if it's natural rather than tactical, when you look at a race, you say, well, here's my grid. That's where a horse should be on its natural ability, rather than a jockey saying, I want it to be there.
Yeah, I'm all about understanding what's the race speed profile. And that is exactly what you said. I look at the MPSs and look at their natural running styles, and from there, you can then bring the other elements to play. Oh, he's always been instructed to go forward, regardless of the pressure. That's a big danger. I look for those flaws, because then that tells me that this particular horse is going to have to waste 3 or 4 more lengths of energy when it doesn't need to.
You mentioned energy. You've got a bit of a theory about gut busters in horses,
Yep.
and that if they just have a run that's so tough that they can't recover from. And particularly, I want to put it through the prism of this time of year. Sometimes, though, a gut buster can also mean a horse is rock hard fit. And I reckon that this time of year, and I've got a couple wrong recently, Clanger's Glory is one that comes to mind. Once the track went real rock heavy, you actually wanted a fitter horse rather than a talented horse. It must be a hard thing to try and weigh up.
It is an important facet, and there are different exertions. So what I'm always looking about when I look at the gut busters and the tough runs, and you do need to be rock hard fit on those wet tracks. You're spot on, Ralphie. But the challenge is this: when horses are early in their prep, if they have those really super tough runs, and let's say it's on a wet track as well, that can sometimes ruin the entire preparation of that horse, and they never come back to run anywhere near what their capabilities are. So I'm very nervous and wary of those things, and that also could give you a big advantage market-wise.
And we saw probably a recent one, and Kenny Callender, who's a legend in the Australian media, I'll put it down on the table first, but when Mr. O'Kieran bounced back from an absolute mad gut-busting run at Moonee Valley, when he got thrashed, to win the Grafton Cup. Now, he was odds on at Moonee Valley, he was 7s into 5s, and Ken Callender, there should be an inquiry. To someone like you, I reckon that was a pretty logical improvement of such a tough run.
When they have tough runs, very few of them can be running like the way they done it at their previous run. They usually run flat. That's what happens.
So, but by extension, a tough run where they drop right out is sometimes better for a horse than when they last all the way into a finish.
Oh, absolutely, because that means you could just completely crush that horse.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Whereas if a horse puts a white flag up like Mr. O'Kieran did at the 400, it actually doesn't kill them that much.
Yeah, well, you've got a chance to recoup.
Trainer interviews. Now, trainer interviews are a big part of racing media, and to give them their due, I've come from an AFL media background. The accessibility and availability of jockeys and trainers are absolute credit to the sport. But I think they're a bit overrated. I mean, ultimately, as a form student, you want to back your own judgment. Maybe I sort of call that a bit of the parsley on the side of the plate. You still have to back your own judgment rather than what the trainer's saying to you.
Yeah, it's a really interesting setup when it comes to that. We do have that luxury of all these marvellous trainers and jockeys communicating and giving us insight. The key thing that one needs to be aware of, and I'll give you the most classic example of recent times in the last couple of weeks. The trainer came on, and he had every right to come on and talk about how fantastic his horse has been going, road tripping.
Stevie
Absolutely flying. And he would be 100% correct. The regular rider said it's never worked that good. This is the best it's ever done. You're spot on. The horse is probably the best it's ever been. But now let's have a look at the elements of all the other runners, and where has it sat in the totem pole coming into that preparation. Well, to be a group horse, you have to improve 10 lengths.
Yeah. He's not going to improve 10 lengths.
So he's not going to be improved. So even if he's improved 2 or 3 or 4, where does that put him? And there's when you have the situation of this happening in a race where he was so heavily supported. They had every right to sort of talk about how good he is, but that's when the form comes into it. And so I could have an advantage here because that horse still needs to find 3 or 4 more lengths to be competitive today.
In a nutshell, Vince Accardi's future focus is our new product coming out, and it's going to be looking at Group 1 races up ahead. And you think there's always room in the market because there's the Spruik horse that a trainer pumps up and says this should be better, so instead of it being 20 to 1, it's 8 to 1. And conversely, there's a horse that's just flying under the radar, running beautiful times.
Well, I mean, some perfect examples. I love 2-year-olds.
Yep.
Races. When they're new into the season, it's a challenging task to work it out. What I love the most is because I've been benchmarking for 20 years and the way I have the scale structure, I can identify immediately how good a young horse is. And typical examples, that horse that came from Adelaide, where people were a little bit 50-50. Yep. That was a definite early futures horse for a Blue Diamond.
I worked with Vince 2 months before that, and he said this is a superstar, and people weren't sure at the time.
And we can get tremendous advantage. And there's been many other occasions in big group races, through the Spring Carnival in particular, where we can get tremendous advantages. And one of the big pluses is when we get the first early look, through all the experience and the practice of having the tables in place and the scientific look at runs, we can identify very quickly, without having to be part of that stable, has that horse come back as well as last preparation, and are they already at that level where they need to be to win those big races and pick up the upside.
All right, well, that'll be our product, and you can hear Vince every Saturday. Either I'm hosting or Nardi Horn's hosting on Carnival, which is RSN's digital channel. We'll stop now, but part 2, we're going to look back at Caulfield through Vince's eyes.